Hello and welcome to This Week in Property. I'm your host Richard Swan, and in today's show we are sitting down with the lovely Lynda Clark, who's the editor of First Time Buyer magazine. Hello there, Lynda. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Hello. Thank you very much for having me today.
My pleasure. Can't wait to jump into this stuff because I think when it comes to the property market, properties themselves, all of the different angles and strategies and offers and lending and so on and so forth, the first-time buyers, they're a key element in a lot of this, and it's amazing the amount of things that surround them, and how they're impacted, how they're served in a lot of ways by the market. And I know that you've got a lot of expertise in that area, so can't wait to jump into all of that. But tell us first about your good self. I'm quite sure you weren't born a magazine editor. So did we come flying out of school and go straight into journalism, or is it a whole winding career path that's kind of brought you to this point in time?
Well, I actually was one of the very lucky ones, I suppose, because right from a very, very early age, I wanted to be a journalist. I used to write little stories when, I was young, and it was always my dream. And I went to a fairly pressured girls' school, private girls' school, which I won a scholarship for. And so they were planning that I was going to be a lawyer or a doctor or... No, that wasn't going to happen. That wasn't quite the plan. So I think my headmistress was in deep despair, but I knew I didn't want to go to university. I just wanted to get on with the job, so to speak.
Right.
And I basically left school and went to the London College of Fashion. And it was the first year they'd ever done this fashion journalism course. And I thought, oh, that'll be okay. It's only a year. It'll give me time to sort of plan out what I do, how I get onto being a paper or a magazine. Anyway, unfortunately, they hadn't really planned this course out. So they didn't really know what to do with us. And it was in Oxford Street. And I was born and brought up in Clapham. So that was no big shakes for me. Obviously, the girls that came from miles away, it was a big deal. But for me, it was just like, no. So during a lot of the free time that we had, I hand wrote to every newspaper in the country to try and become an indentured reporter, and was very lucky that I got a job on my local newspaper, which was the part of the Surrey and South London News Group. Right. So my patch was kind of Streatham, Brixton. It was really edgy, but it was wonderful. I was the only girl amongst all these guys, so I had to kind of stand my ground right from day one. I really had to, and a 19-year-old young girl that's never been out in the real world, it was quite interesting. So I did that for 3 years, and then I joined the fashion team on Women's Weekly magazine, which was an incredible job. I mean, it was absolutely glamorous. There was a lot of money around in those days. So we were, jetting off to Paris for the collections, taking photos. It was an amazing job.
Brilliant.
And I stayed there for many, many years and became fashion editor eventually. But there came a point where I decided that really this wasn't quite working anymore. Right. I love fashion, and I still do, but it was just not turning me on properly. And I thought, I've got to get out of this. Yeah. So I decided to go more into interiors, because it's a kind of one step slightly similar, because interiors follows fashion, but not as fashiony, if you know what I mean. And then from that, and I used to do big room sets and all sorts of things. And then I started my own magazine, which was called Spaces, which was very, very out there. It was a little bit ahead of its time. Right. So it sold lots and lots of copies. It was really for people that are very, very design orientated. They love architecture. So it was very global. Right. Because obviously some of the architecture that you get in Australia or Japan is completely different to what we have here. So we sold loads and loads and loads everywhere in the world except England. I just think it didn't quite hit the spot here. So anyway, I kept it going for 5 years, which was, I thought, really good. And then just got to the point where no, I couldn't sustain that any longer. And I sold the title, thank goodness. But then I was left in the situation, what do I do now?
Sure.
I hadn't really worked for anybody for a long time. I had done other jobs before the Spaces experience. I've been editor of a magazine, which was all sort of period cottages, which didn't really do it for me.
Right.
And then this job came up, and it was for a junior person to join First Time Buyer. And I thought, I'm not really a junior. But anyway, I called them up, and lovely Sarah, who owns First Time Buyer, and everything that we do, she met me, and I'd never had a CV. So I went along there thinking, oh, this is a bit awkward. I had lots of pictures of things I'd done and copies of various things. She said, oh, I don't want to see any of that. She said, can you start Monday? The weirdest time. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was just, it'll be 13 years, I think, in April.
Wow.
So I joined on the Monday, and within a very short period of time, she asked me to be editor, and really that's how it all began.
That is sensational. Straight away, I'm loving this conversation already. And this is why I love getting to hear people's stories. That was just tremendous. There was so much in that, so many life lessons in there that, let's put the property angle just to the side for a wee second. Just the young folks listening in, watching in for this, there's so much golden nuggets in there. The way you went after something, the whole story about knowing inside you, I've got this thing, this journalism thing. Aye, that's me, and I'm going towards that. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the end goal is, but I'm going towards it. I'm chasing that. I love that. That's brilliant. And then you took those wee steps. I'll try this, and then the fashion thing comes up, and then all of a sudden, jet setting around the world. All these amazing opportunities that just appear by magic, but they don't really. They only appear if you actually take a step towards them.
Absolutely.
I love that. And then the way you just kept your eyes open all the time. What's that over there? And then feeling in yourself, going into your instinct and thinking, right, I've reached this point where you mentioned the kind of phrase, it doesn't really do it for me anymore. And rather than staying there, like a lot of people do, so many people with terrible lives, just kicking themselves at jobs day after day after. You said, no, this isn't for me. So let's keep my eyes open. What else is there? And then I move across to something else. That's a brilliant life lesson as well. And then having that strength to create something, that the magazine that you had for like 5 years, I mean, that's amazing. The amount of startups and things that collapse after 6 months, never mind 5 years, that's fantastic. And then going on, and the kind of final one that really sparked for me was that, the advert for the junior, 9 times out of 10, someone will look at an opportunity and say, oh, that's not for me. It's a closed door. Not you, not Lynda Clark. Oh, no. I'm picking up the phone, she says. I'm following this through, and I don't have a CV. I'm not a junior, but I'm just going to go for it. And look what happens. 13 years. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I really believe that everybody at some point, not all the time, but should reinvent yourself, because you as you get older, or you change, or your circumstances change, life changes around you, and you have to change with it. Whether that's changing jobs or just your outlook, there's a lot of things you really need to think about. Not every day, but maybe every 5 years.
Yeah.
Just because you've just got to twist a little bit, I think, on that path.
Yes, that's right. A little pivot somewhere or another. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. That's tremendous. Absolutely. I tell you, we could finish this conversation right now because it's just gold dust. But we won't. We will carry on, because if I pull on that wee thread about change and adaptation, when we think about first-time buyers, when we think about the property market, I mean, my goodness, it's a whole hubbub of activity and constant change. Right? Help to buy, here you go. Right, shared ownership. Okay, this over here. New lending and mortgage products. Oh my goodness, it seems to be this constant thing. Yeah. Have you always seen that the first time buyer part of the kind of property puzzle, have you always seen it as one of the major key elements? And do you think it always will be, just because of their entry point into the market?
Absolutely. So it is a maze. It is a complete maze. And that is where I think we come in to try and help and inform and guide the people, because a lot of people have never done it before. Obviously, they're first-time buyers. If mum and dad haven't bought for the last 25 years, things have changed radically. So I think the first-time buyer, any developer or housing association will say that they are the lifeblood of the market.
Yeah.
That is really what inspires and spurs people on. And that has proved very, very much during this awful pandemic.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
The first-time buyer market was buoyant, and and everybody had to think how to do things differently by doing virtual viewings, which actually worked really well.
Right. Were you quite surprised by that?
I was, because I thought people would physically want to go and, you know, touch the wall, or, you know, whatever people do when they view a home. Because most first-time buyers these days do tend to buy new build, unless you are really lucky to have that huge deposit to buy on the open market. They will take advantage of, as you said, Help to Buy, shared ownership, what the government schemes are out there that they can only need a very small deposit. But the virtual viewings were actually good because everybody could watch them, in the sense that if you wanted mum and dad and auntie and uncle and your gran all to in and say, oh, that one that's really good, or that one's not quite right, look at that, you know, it was actually opened up the world for a lot of people, because they really could do a joint decision if that's what they wanted. And some of the ways they did these videos, you felt unbelievably like you were walking. It was so clever. Technology at its best. And then the salesperson would be there, and if you wanted, obviously you could ask a billion questions because they would be talking to you, but if you wanted her to open the door, pull out the drawers, whatever, they would do that. So it wasn't too static. It was very, very, very clever. And that worked because a lot of people, I think lots of young people, which most first-time buyers are, you know, we're talking, you know, 20s, 30s and early 40s. They were either living at home with mum and dad and loving it, but it wasn't quite what they'd planned, that they were going to be 24/7, or they were renting with flatmates, friends, whoever. And again, a lot of people had no outside space. They were all going absolutely crazy, and you probably saw your flatmates for an hour a day, but you didn't really want to live with them in those very small, tight circumstances. So everybody wanted to get out. If you were going to make a move, you were going to do it. And I think that's what spurred everybody on to try and actually view the market. See, and then of course we had stamp duty holiday.
Yes, another key element. So you obviously must have seen a massive impact from that.
Massive.
Is it something you touched on a lot in the magazine as well? Is it, you know, articles and viewpoints? Well,
the magazine is bi-monthly, so it's 6 times a year. So yes, we did, but we couldn't do it over and over again because it opens a window of opportunity. So we made a big splash of it at the time and told people to take advantage, get out there and do it. But yes, it was quite an important thing, and sales rocketed. People were just going crazy because it saved so much money.
Yeah, exactly. A big impact.
And so that did have an impact, as you say, on the market. And there's only one fly in the ointment, and that unfortunately is there's really still a lack of supply.
Right.
So there are homes, obviously, there's loads of homes, but there are an awful lot of apartments. There's not so many family houses. So if you are thinking ahead, you might just be a couple at the moment, but if you're thinking ahead, well, one day we probably will start a family and this place isn't going to work. That's tricky because there are family homes out there, but there are not as many as obviously living in an apartment or buying an apartment.
Yeah, of course. You know, it's interesting what you're chatting about the viewings there. That I never thought about it that way. You know, it really was a case of a disadvantage becoming an advantage. It's amazing because you touched upon something I wouldn't even have thought of because, not in normal times, shall we call them, pre-pandemic, you know, that young couple might be saying to themselves, oh, we'll go and see the place on Saturday. oh, but dad's working and it's only mum that can come, and
Yes.
Uncle John, the builder, it's a shame we can't get him because he lives too far away. That's all wiped out. Suddenly that becomes an advantage with the online viewing. You know, Uncle John can tap in from anywhere and mum and dad can, you know, see it in their own time. And well,
Yeah.
remember and check with the agent about, you know, the staircase and so on and so forth. Oh yeah, it's a great idea. That really family coming together. That's a brilliant review you've done there. Really like that.
I think we always advise when you go on a viewing, you know, to go with a list of questions.
Yeah.
But you get a little bit overwhelmed at the
Yes.
time, because, you know, everything's looking incredible and you're just imagining, oh, the sofa could go there and I could put this here. And I think by having the virtual viewings, of course, everybody pitched in and they could all say, well, what about this? Like you said, what about the staircase? What about the size of the second bedroom or whatever?
Yeah.
And that really opened up, I think, a lot of opportunities for people to make a very, very informed decision about what they really wanted.
Yeah.
Because it's a massive, I mean, it's the biggest thing in your life.
Of course. Ever. Yeah.
And that is quite scary in the first instance.
Yeah.
Excitement can take over and you can get a little bit carried away.
Yes.
So you've got to keep your feet on the ground. You really have.
Yes. Actually, let's touch on that. There's so many things in my head I want to run with, but just that keep your feet on the ground, getting carried away. Are we seeing that just now with prices? Because there's so many people around talking about the market, talking about going to, you know, closing dates, paying way over the valuation, way over the home reports that we have here in Scotland, for example. Is there a fear of that bubble? Is there a fear of these first-time buyers being disadvantaged, being exploited in some way with supply and demand? What's the kind of general thoughts?
I mean, obviously prices are rising, and that is not to be unexpected. You know, it was kind of on the cards.
Yeah.
I think what people are looking at more so is the mortgage situation.
Right.
Because interest rates are not going to stay this low forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
And there's everybody's waiting for that Bank of England to say, right, this is, you know, we've got to hike it up. And of course, getting a mortgage is not always that easy. You don't just prance in and get one.
Yeah.
We always advise people to talk to a mortgage advisor and get a proper overview of what you can afford, and they can look at the whole market and tell you what is right for you. But people don't take into consideration things like credit score, which is very, very, very important. They probably don't even know that it matters, and they have no idea. So there's an awful lot of learning along that way. But I do think that if the mortgage rates go up, then that will have an impact on first-time buyers, because at the moment, the mortgage rates being so low, it's actually, we've got so much research and reports and things that we've done that if you're renting, you pay more than if you get a mortgage.
Right, there we go. And you know, we were speaking earlier about adaptation. I think a lot of us have just adapted to the low level.
Yeah.
We've almost forgot that this interest rate thing, it can go up the way as well, you know. It's almost as if we've just put our head in the sand with it.
Well, I think people have got used to living to that standard.
Yeah.
That's how much I have. And it will never change. But of course, it will change once the mortgage rates, because obviously you pay more mortgage.
Yes.
And I think people have got to be aware of that. So don't overstretch yourself.
Yeah.
So that actually, if the mortgage rate does go up, which it will do at some point, you are literally thinking, I have got nothing to spend on food or bills. Because buying a home isn't just, I'm here now. You've still got all the other things you have to pay for.
Yeah.
So I think people should take that and as again, talking to a mortgage advisor, if you go and think, right, I know I can afford 400,000, say, seems a huge amount of money. The mortgage advisor will actually tell you what you really can afford, so that when you go on your search, you're not looking at places that are so more than you can afford, and you're going to get so disappointed because you won't get a mortgage and you can't afford it. It will sort of he will tell you, or she'll tell you, you really are up to 350, you're okay. That just keeps it all level.
Gotcha.
And then it opens another world to you, because then you know exactly what you're going to look at, and it's no point in overstretching yourself.
No, definitely. Good stuff. Good stuff. So the magazine itself, folks listening, watching in, whenever it's safe to do so, make sure you go into the show notes, because you'll see all the links through to connecting with Lynda, but more importantly, the magazine as well. As Lynda says, it's out, bi-monthly. It's at WH Smith stock it as well, don't they? In kind of paper format. Yeah.
I think we're in 116 WH Smiths.
Great.
Throughout the country.
Yeah.
Some supermarkets. Obviously, people can subscribe. So our readership changes all the time, because basically you're going to read, if you have 6 issues, that's 1 year.
Yeah.
Probably either know it by then, you don't really need us to help you, or you've bought, or you're not going to bother.
Yeah.
It's quite refreshing that we have a really, really quick turnover of readers. So we do have a big database, obviously, as subscribers, but that is constantly evolving.
Great stuff. Great. And obviously people can see things online as well, follow through with the Twitter page and the website and so on. Typical modern day world, this is where we are with our electronic devices.
Absolutely. And something else that we do is, so we always used to do 2 or 3 live, what we call home shows each year in different locations. We'd always do one up in the north, around Manchester, always do one in the south, and maybe another one. And this is a sort of day event where people can literally come and talk on a one-to-one basis with finance, legal, developers and housing associations. And we haven't been able to do that because obviously it's been possible.
Yeah.
So this year we created National Home Buying Week, which we have another dedicated website for. And on there's lots of, my art director came up with this sort of stick man, which he's very sweet. Everybody loves him. And we basically did lots of videos of him buying on the open market, buying on shared ownership. So there's a lot of guidance on this website.
Right.
And then fingers crossed, everything crossed, we are having a live London home show in central London on the 19th of March next year. Fantastic. Followed by the week, a lot of activity online, and then ending with a show on the 26th of March in Manchester.
Brilliant. Oh, fingers crossed indeed. That'll be sensational.
Yeah, it's so important because people, it's fine going online. People do, first-time buyers do go online a lot.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of advice out there. Not all of it. Sometimes it conflicts and you get very confused. But actually talking to somebody on a one-to-one is so important. And having we have financial advisors there. So you get like a free 5-10 minute chat with them, which is absolutely worth its weight in gold. And talking to conveyancers, because that's another real stumbling block.
Yes, the whole process and everything wrapped around it. Yeah, because it can, it must be I'm almost thinking back to my first property myself, but it's a real nervous situation. It's another big first in your life. And how does this work? And what do I need to do? And when do I need to do it? And all the paperwork and the sums involved. It can be quite an intimidating prospect for people.
Very.
Yeah.
On a regular basis, we don't go and see a solicitor unless you've got some serious problem.
Yeah.
So, people don't ever have that contact. And suddenly they've got to they don't even know what the word conveyancer means.
Yeah.
So you have to get over the first hurdle of what actually a conveyancer does. And we always say, don't go down the high street and just go into anywhere. There are very, very specialised legal firms that specialise with first-time buyers, and they really are hand-holding, which is what you need.
Yeah, of course. That's it. Guide them along the way and reassure them, keep them right, and jump through the hurdles when we're supposed to. Yeah, tremendous.
I do think that this is the biggest thing for first-time buyers. A lot of hand-holding, a lot of help when they need it. You don't want to become an irritant.
No.
You need to actually do a lot of explaining, because there's so much information, you completely get fuddled.
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. So the magazine is brilliant. It gives out so much information, so many articles, ideas on things, tips and tricks for moving in as well, competitions, all sorts of stuff. you mentioned about the kind of the days in, you know, in the real world, as we love to call it, having to be put on hold with the pandemic. Is that also been the same for the award shows that you're involved with as well?
Right. So yes, we do our first time buyer readers awards, which are a massive event. This is obviously B2B, but the consumers are involved because basically everybody enters all these different categories. We've got about 12 categories, everything ranging from private developer of the year, affordable housing provider of the year, to best large development, and a whole host of stuff in between. And then people send the entries in, and then we have a really expert panel of judges who come up with a shortlist. And then that is put onto the website, goes in the magazine, and the readers vote.
Ah, fantastic.
Which is great. It's extremely fair, and readers have a say, and the readers love it because they see things, they can do a bit of research and investigation, and then they vote.
Right.
And then we have a big lunch in London, where obviously the awards take place, hosted by Nicky Chapman and Johnny Irwin from Escape to the Country.
Yeah.
Fabulous, fabulous. So obviously we couldn't do it when we were all in lockdown.
Yes.
So we had to do it virtually, and I was terrified. I thought, oh, this is just not going to happen. But we pre-recorded the sponsors who sponsor the award, who give it out. Nicky and Johnny did a fabulous job with it as well. And then we showed it on one afternoon. We sent everybody a hamper, so that while they were watching it, where they normally have had a lunch, we sent them a hamper full of goodies.
That's a great idea.
And it was like a party, because obviously there's things you can do on Zoom where you can all be there afterwards chatting away. And it wasn't as good really as being there in the flesh, so to speak. But this year we did do them live.
Excellent.
And
excellent.
The buzz in that room was incredible. We are the first people to do the awards, because there's several lots of Evening Standard do some, What House do some, but we were the first. Brilliant. And we really did some special stuff to make it unbelievable.
Excellent.
Choir, which I mean, I don't think I've ever been to an awards where people have had a gospel choir singing, but it just brought the house down, you know.
Fantastic.
So this we're planning. The awards have just been launched again for 22,
right?
And we're planning to do the awards lunch on the 2nd of September. So
brilliant.
I think everybody has to have a bit of positivity.
Yes, exactly. And you are building up for a very good sound in 2022, which I love. I love it. Good on you. From London to Manchester and awards. This is tremendous. Yeah, more power to your elbow, as they say. So these first-time buyers, these people, let's kind of focus on that and how your magazine helps them. We've touched on a few elements. I'm just wondering about the major challenges. So we've got the, let's call it emotional, with unsure, I don't quite know about this conveyancing thing. I'm hearing you talking about the material, physical, which is supply and demand that's going on. And then I'm also hearing about the financial aspect, prices and deposits and all sorts of things. Do those cover the kind of three main things? Is there any more to consider? And is one more powerful than the other in your view?
I think it starts way before that, actually trying to save for a deposit. Because that is tough. Yeah. Really tough, because the majority of people, unless you've got extremely rich parents with the bank of mum and dad, you are doing it on your own. If you're in a rented place, you're paying quite a substantial amount for that. There is probably not a lot left over to actually save. There are ISAs, there's things that the government have produced where you can earn, but it's not vast amounts of money. So I think the first hurdle that any first-time buyer has is actually getting that deposit together.
Right.
I mean, we will do features in the magazine where we say there's certain like cards you can get where if you spend that you can, I don't quite know how to explain it. I think it's called a Monzo card or a Monzo card.
Right.
And you get, that they'll make it up by a few pence. So if you spend £12.50, the 50p I think is then added. You spend 13 pounds.
Right. Okay.
And that does build up over time. you know, things like don't buy an expensive sandwich lunch, just take a little box and do your own, and don't buy all these cups of coffee because they mount up.
Yeah.
But these are little pounds, they do round up. It does take quite a long time.
Of course.
So I think that's the first hurdle. And then obviously, I think my second biggest thing is the money, is the mortgage. Because it's not a foregone conclusion that everybody prances in and just gets what they want. The mortgage market is now back to being very, very good again. But during the pandemic, you know, they were a little bit dodgy about lending and who they were going to lend to, how much they were going to lend. And the loan to value rates got quite difficult.
Yes.
That's all come back and everything seems fine. And I think the mortgage market is doing very, very well.
Great.
I would say that before you even embark on even thinking about viewing or, you know, deciding exactly what you want to do, you should definitely take my advice and find out if you can get a mortgage, how much you can. You can sort your credit rating out if it's a bit dodgy.
Right.
All your things there ready.
Right.
And then make a list of what your priorities are. So do you want to be near a station or a bus stop? Do you need to be near schools if you're a parent? Do you need open space? Do you want to be near a park or lots of green land around you? A lot of people, a lot of first-time buyers have actually, they're abandoning the idea of living in central London because everybody seems to be working from home now. And they're all moving out a little bit further because they probably don't have to do the commute as often, if at all. And then, of course, you get more value for money and you get much more space.
Yes, exactly. So you've seen that real societal shift.
Massive trend. So where everybody wants to live, you know, I mean, zone 2, zone 1 even, now it's very much more in suburbs and a little bit further out. And that has made a huge amount of impact on the market.
Of course, because it's starting to spread.
Out. People definitely get more space and people just want some green. But going back to what I was saying, I do think that you need to make your priority list. Now, you can't tick every box.
No.
You might have to give something up. Do you need 2 bedrooms? Do you want 2 bedrooms? Do you want an ensuite? You know, there's loads and loads of things you can think about. So you need to make your I want list, but then compromise. That is really important. You have to be able to compromise so that you eventually come up with nearly everything, but you may not quite get it all.
You're right. Gotcha. I like that. Loads of good tips there. So if that's the buyer, the consumer, the person trying to come into the market, what about when we flip it around to the suppliers, the developers and so on? Is there things that you really feel, I wish they would think about this, I wish they would create spaces as such as that, I wish they would produce more of these types of properties? Is there anything that kind of comes to mind there?
Yes. So I think the developers have really got onto the sustainability of homes being built.
Right.
And that is going to become more and more obvious from sort of now on. We're all very, very, very aware now of being sustainable and building homes because gas boilers are going to be phased out at some point. I can't remember the exact date, but you know, they've got to take on board this. They can't build homes which have got gas boilers, which will be useless. So they're all having to think about that. They're all trying to do like really sustainable building, which I think is very, very good. I also am very impressed now because I've been to a lot of developments where I've gone in and before, some years ago, thought, gosh, where do you put your ironing board? Where do you put your suitcase? They have all got aware of actually people need some sort of storage.
Right.
And they are using cupboards and spaces very, very cleverly.
Right.
So often you will find a washer dryer in the cupboard in the hallway, which is like a storage cupboard, and it's got the washer dryer there, which frees up a lot of space in the kitchen.
Gotcha.
So you probably end up with much more cupboards and drawers in the kitchen, which you need.
Right.
We've got stuff that we need to stash away somewhere. So I'm very impressed with the fact that they sort of become aware that people do need not just space, but they need stuff, a space where they can actually put their things. Because we've all got, as I say, we've all got things we need to store.
Yeah, it's the practical part of living, isn't it?
Practical part of living,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And a show home looks fabulous, but there's, you know, nobody actually lives there.
No. It's just this image, this Disneyland image that we see.
Absolutely. I think they're also, HAs and developers, they're also very aware that if they're building a block of apartments, you know, balconies, terraces, and very lovely, a lot of them have beautiful gardens around them.
Right.
Which, you know, very, with seating and areas, quiet areas.
Right.
That's amazing. Some of them have space like on the ground floor for co-working areas.
Ah,
Fabulous. If you actually are working at home and you don't want to sit indoors in your little flat all the time, you can go downstairs and plug in your computer and sit there. It just changes your scenery a bit. I think that's brilliant. Gyms, obviously, a lot of them have gyms. There is just one small down point of all these added extras, is that will be included in the service charge.
Yes, back to the money again, getting your numbers right, making sure before you commit to something, you actually, wait a minute, what else am I paying for here over and above my mortgage? Yeah. The
service charge is going to have to include upkeep of the grounds, you know, paying for a gym, blah, blah, blah. So don't think, oh, wow, you know, I go to the gym every morning and when I get home from work, this is perfect. Yeah. And I've got XYZ, which at the end of the day, you're paying for that. So check out your service charge before you actually commit. So make sure it is affordable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Absolutely great point. All these things we don't consider because we get carried away with the emotion. Look at all these freebies that I have around here. No, not quite. Let's get them on the spreadsheet. Fantastic. Now, I want to be respectful of your time, so I'm conscious of kind of not taking up too much more of your time. Looking into the future with the magazine, any goals, milestones, targets, ambitions, thoughts when you think of it?
Well, we have won Consumer Property Magazine of the Year 2 years in a row.
2 years in a row, fantastic.
So our aim is next year to get the triple.
We're going for the hat trick.
We're going for the hat trick.
Fantastic.
So we have got that in our little psyche somewhere, that obviously we are so proud. And my team play a huge part in this as well. I mean, obviously of course, you know, it's not all about me at all, it's them as well. So that's kind of a little goal. I think to just really, really, really keep the magazine momentum going and always be on top of the market so that we're always advising the right things. I would love to say, oh, we're going to do another show and a this and a that. We're doing what we can, and these shows I think will be sensational as long as we can go ahead. Maybe next year, or not next year, the year after, we'll probably end up doing more shows, right? Because those I know really, really, really help people. And obviously, you know, we do one in Manchester, and a lot of people from Liverpool or all sorts of places will drive to Manchester, because people in the north of England do tend to drive more than we do in the south. They've got space, really. But obviously, doing one in London, I'd like to do some more in the suburbs.
Right, fantastic. Oh, this girl's got plans. This girl's got plans. I love it. I love it.
Always look ahead, don't look back.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to force you to take one short look back, because here's my final question for you. Okay. With your journey in mind, with the whole path through chasing journalism and adapting between fashion and bridging and, you know, moving across and pivoting, with everything you've done through the magazine, First Time Buyer magazine specifically, and that the history there, the things you've built up, the teams, the goals that have been met, and so on and so forth. What have you learned about you? What have you learned about Lynda Clark along that journey, would you say?
So I don't know how much time we have, but this is a very, very quick story. So when I had Spaces, we also did a bit of travel in it.
Right.
And we weren't going to tell, because our readership, they were very intelligent. They, you know, they had a bit of money. They knew how to go to Paris. They didn't need me to tell them. And I was very, very honoured to go on a trip up the Amazon.
Oh, wow.
In Ecuador. It was a press trip, and we literally went and lived in the jungle. And when we arrived at this lodge, there were quite a few sort of huts, which is all they were, around this black lake. Right. But Muggins here gets given the little hut practically in the jungle on my own. And the first nights that I stayed there, they gave you a light that was the size of a tea light. I mean, you just couldn't see. I knew there was a tarantula on the ceiling. I'd seen that when I first got there. And it took me an hour to decide whether to tuck my mosquito net tight so I could feel something if it hit me, or leave it loose. Oh my gosh. And after I got all tucked in, I decided, oh my gosh, I should turn my shoes over so that if anything crawls in,
right,
they won't. Anyway, I had the best night's sleep. Fantastic night's sleep. When I woke up in the morning, I couldn't stop crying. And that was my eureka moment, because I had come to terms with me and what I was about. There was no internet, there was no phones. I'd survived, I'd done it on my own. And the inner strength that gave me was unbelievable, and that has remained with me to this day. And if you can find that inner strength of yours, you will absolutely do whatever you want, whether you want to climb Mount Everest, buy a home, save a deposit, you will do it, as long as you have that inner feeling of knowing who you are.
Absolutely perfect. She started with a great story and lessons in life. She finishes with another great story and more lessons in life. She's just a champion. What a girl. Lynda Clark, editor of First Time Buyer magazine. Thank you very much indeed for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's show as much as I did. Remember, with the guests that you just saw, go into the show notes for the page, because all of their links are there so that you can get in touch and to get more information. And talking about getting more information, more guests, more insights, more knowledge, etc., make sure you're subscribed. Get the subscription done, get the notifications on, and then we'll always keep in touch with you every single time a brand new show is going to come out. So thanks for tuning to This Week in Property.